Usually at the beginning of every chapter, there's a little quotation. I don't know what effect they have on the enemy, but by the Emperor, they frighten me. You're the general. You should know what effect they have on the enemy. So in any event, we are introduced to Ciaphas Cain, who mentions that commissars are never really welcome, except in his case where he is considered a hero. And that he should have realized how bad the situation was when the new commanding officer actually smiled at him. Because commissars are not well liked, because usually when they're not ordering executions, there's flogging soldiers for the smallest infraction. It is here we finally get a real insight into Cain's character, because he finds the overall sincerity of her greeting nauseating. We also get a bit of background on the regiment that he's just been attached to. Essentially, it's an amalgamation of two other regiments, the 290th and the 301st. One was an all-male regiment and was an all-female regiment. So, it did not really mesh too well. And Castine, the colonel of the regiment, was given command by virtue of 3 days' seniority over her immediate subordinate, a male with greater combat experience, but Castine would prove herself in this coming battle. This arrangement caused a great deal of consternation between Colonel Castine and Major Brocklaw, and in turn caused a great deal of unrest in the regiment itself. Good God, it's the Amalgam comics all over again. All this mutual hatred eventually comes to a head when there's a riot that breaks out in the mess hall. Unfortunately, Cain is rather close to this riot. And then, of course, one of the provosts that was sent to quell said riot yells out, "Commissar, help!" And then Cain shouts out something that's somewhat odd, but really, there wasn't much else he could have said.
Get a broom! This mess hall's a disgrace!
Okay. This rather eclectic exclamation causes everyone to basically freeze in place, and essentially the riot peters out and everybody just sort of wanders away. The quote for this chapter is kind of funny. You get more with a kind word and an excruciator than with just a kind word. It is here we find out why the riot occurred in the first place. Essentially, the soldiers did not like the plates that they were being served food on, and basically that was the last straw. They could handle no more. They'd been amalgamated, and they'd been cooped up on a ship for far too long, and they decided to finally snap. Which isn't all that surprising when you think about it. Human beings can only take so much. But Cain, being Cain, decided not to simply execute everyone, but instead meted out a few small punishments, and was basically able to use this event to regain the morale that had been lost since the amalgamation. With the issues of the regiment taken care of, we finally get to the main story. The Imperial Guard has been called to a planet called Crepha. Due to its proximity to the Tau Empire, the Tau have been influencing the people on Crepha, and the Imperium obviously does not like any sort of Xenoist influence, so that is the main reason why the Imperial Guard is going out there, mainly just as a show of force, really. And that's primarily because, while the Empire may be about 10,000 years old, it's lost most of its really high technology. So basically, they're working with almost World War II level technology. They got basic tanks that don't really have any computer systems whatsoever, and the soldiers are armed with a single laser gun, and they wear armor that's basically just a flak jacket. It's actually called flak armor, whereas the Tau, they've got battlesuit technology, they've got smart missiles and all of that. So any conflict between the Imperium and the Tau would basically just be a meat grinder style campaign. And here is an example of reverse suspense. It says here, leaving me running for my life yet again, and beginning a long and welcome association with the Emperor's pet psychopaths. So we now know he's going to meet the Inquisition. But we just don't know when or how. Also, the footnote's rather funny too. Not the most flattering or accurate description of His Divine Majesty's Most Holy Inquisition, it must be admitted. Even though in all reality, the Inquisition is basically a group of psychopaths. And so when they arrive on the planet, they have this parade. However, the citizens are not all that pleased with them being there. Some of them cheer and are happy. Others are against the Imperium arriving on the planet. One even puts up this sign that says, "Murderers go home." And then someone actually shouts out, "Go back to your Emperor," which is not altogether too smart when you're living under a government that is both secular and religious all at the same time, and essentially compiles both Stalin's Russia and Nazi Germany. After they get settled in, Ciaphas meets an old friend from another regiment, and here is where we find another humorous reference. One of the Xenoists, which actually has blue face paint on, says, "You're here to take our world, but you will not take our freedom!" Upon saying that, they begin to attack, and Ciaphas blows off part of his face, which did not do anything to improve his overall looks. And of course, Divas tries to attack, but he gets beaten down pretty good. Essentially, a Kroot comes along and breaks up the fight. The Kroot will be important later in the novel. So after that misadventure draws to a close, Commissar Cain and Colonel Castine are called to the governor's mansion to attend a soiree of sorts. That's royalty for you. They can always find time to get drunk and gorge themselves on food, even if the planet's half destroyed. Now, when they arrive at the mansion, Castine gets a bit excited, and Cain then compares the governor's mansion to a brothel he once visited. You see, Cain is simply reminding Castine to not show any outward signs of amazement at its overall gaudiness. So during the soiree, the Tau ambassador gets shot. This causes the honor guard to get a bit angry, but Cain is able to defuse it. Also, the majority of the planet rises up in a riot. It seems that this is sort of a theme in this book, rioting due to simmering hatred. So, essentially, Cain must return the remaining Tau envoys to the Tau consulate. If he does not, it will most likely be interpreted as an act of war, and will cause a huge war between the Tau and the Imperium, which would not be good for either side. Along the way, they're stopped by some Xenoists. Cain, ever quick thinking, uses the remaining Tau envoys to quell the Xenoist disturbance. In addition to the rioting in the cities, elements of the PDF defected, essentially turning most of the planet into a war zone. The ever-pragmatic Cain decided that he did not wish to be anywhere near the ferocious fighting that was ripping through the city. So, he took an assignment to attempt to find a missing Inquisitor. He met the person in question at the governor's soiree, but we'll get to that in a moment. While Jurgen is attempting to load the Inquisitor's retinue into their escape vehicle, one of them cries out that he's nothing, whereupon Cain humorously remarks that once you get past Jurgen's foul stench and skin diseases, he's really quite good. The thing is, Cain did not know that Jurgen was a psychic blank. He also didn't know something else as well. The person he thought to be an Inquisitor was named Aurelius. Now, the problem was, he was not. It was instead a person named Amberly Vale. Now, he met both individuals at the governor's soiree. A nice piece of dramatic irony, if I do say so myself.